What we saw on Sportcenter today was a fascinating conversation about the roster puzzle facing both the New York Knicks and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Knicks, as reported on the show, have made some recent signings, Landry Shamet and Malcolm Brogdon, to strengthen their core and round out their depth. But with those moves comes a very real financial complication. Because New York is hard-capped at the second apron, they only have the space to bring in one veteran on a minimum contract. That means a decision is coming quickly. Either the Knicks will have to choose between Shamet and Brogdon, or they'll need to create flexibility by making a salary dump type trade. Now, the discussion turned toward how the Lakers might be able to step into this situation. Los Angeles is in an interesting position themselves. They have needs, particularly when it comes to bolstering the roster with reliable depth, but they don't have the salary structure to simply absorb a contract. So, any realistic scenario would likely require a third team to get involved. Still, the Knicks do have pieces that could make sense for the Lakers. And during the program, one name kept coming up: Mitchell Robinson. Robinson, we were reminded, has been floated in trade conversations before. The Knicks had discussions at the trade deadline and again earlier in the offseason about potentially moving on from him. Questions remain about how he fits long-term in New York, especially with the recent additions of front-court players who can stretch the floor and play within a modern five-out system. With Karl-Anthony Towns already on the roster, and even Gershon Yabusele as a versatile big who can provide minutes inside, New York may be more open to reshaping its center rotation. That's where the Lakers enter the picture. On the show, there was talk of a possible framework. Robinson's contract is just under $13 million, and if the Knicks packaged him with someone like Tyler Kolek, their young guard on a cheap deal, that gets close to $15 million in outgoing salary. A construction like that could line up with a package from the Lakers centered around Gabe Vincent and another piece, perhaps a pick or even someone like Dalton Knecht, while a third team, maybe the Nets for example, could be brought in to take on a younger player or to balance salaries. The idea here isn't that Los Angeles would be rushing to make such a move. As was emphasized in the discussion, backups at the center position don't usually swing playoff series. By the time the postseason arrives, your starter is logging 35 minutes a night, and those backup minutes shrink to maybe 8 or 9, with the rest filled by small ball lineup. But the Lakers could look at this as an opportunity to both clear salary and add a piece that fits a specific role, while also taking advantage of New York's roster crunch. And this is where the intrigue really lies. New York doesn't have unlimited assets to simply dump salary. We've seen other teams try this approach, Dallas and Miami for instance, and the rest of the league knows the leverage is on their side. If you're going to ask another team to take on a contract, it comes at a cost. That cost could be attaching young players with upside, like Kolek or one of their other developmental pieces, rather than draft picks that the Knicks may not want to part with. So the scenario discussed on Sportcenter is essentially this. The Knicks have put themselves in a bind by signing both Shamet and Brogdon. The Lakers are a team looking for creative ways to improve the roster, and a third team could become the key to making it all work. It's the kind of layered trade talk that highlights just how difficult managing the cap and roster construction can be when two franchises with championship ambitions find themselves pressed up against financial restrictions. Let's take this from a wider perspective. If the Lakers were able to pull off a deal sending out Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and a second-round pick in exchange for Mitchell Robinson, they'd not only be acquiring a proven defensive anchor, but they'd also be clearing close to $4 million in salary and opening a roster spot. That's no small thing, especially when you consider the kind of veterans still sitting on the market, waiting for clarity before training camp. Reports earlier in the summer suggested that several free agents with interest in the Warriors have grown increasingly impatient, realizing that if Golden State doesn't make a move, they could be left without a team. That's exactly where the Lakers could pounce. By adding Robinson while also freeing up money and roster spots, Los Angeles could position itself to sign one or two of those veteran pieces, whether it's DeAnthony Melton, Al Horford, or another experienced role player. Imagine walking into camp not just with Robinson, but also with another steady veteran in the mix. Suddenly, the Lakers' depth looks a lot different. And here's the thing. Nobody is saying the Lakers must panic about the center position. Jackson Hayes showed last season that he can fill regular season minutes without being a liability. On nights when a starter is resting, Hayes can step in, give energy, run the floor, and hold his own. He may not be a playoff-caliber starter, but he's serviceable. Pairing him with Luka Doncic, for example, in certain lineups, could even bring out the best in him. The issue isn't whether Hayes can contribute. It's whether the Lakers want to rely solely on him when the postseason rolls around. That's why a move for Robinson makes sense. Yes, he comes with injury concerns. That's part of the risk. But you're acquiring him in a deal that also doubles as a salary dump, which the Lakers have been actively seeking. From that angle, the downside is limited. You're not mortgaging the future, you're using expendable pieces to bring in a potential defensive game-changer while setting yourself up to add even more help. And if the Lakers did all that, it could change their entire trade calculus. Imagine a scenario where Robinson is added, the cap flexibility is opened, and suddenly, Los Angeles can pivot back to the Andrew Wiggins conversation. Now you're talking about a potential roster featuring Wiggins, Mitchell Robinson, and possibly veterans like Horford or Melton. That type of depth and versatility could completely reshape the Lakers' outlook. At that point, you're not just talking about patchwork moves, you're talking about a roster that can legitimately go 10 or 11 players deep come playoff time. Think about it. Wiggins and Robinson could be part of a starting five on plenty of teams around the league, yet on this version of the Lakers, they might not even have to carry that full burden. That's the type of rotation that allows a team to survive injuries, manage minutes, and stay fresh for the postseason grind. In other words, what looks like a small shuffle on paper, Vincent, Connect, and a second-round pick, could set off a domino effect that leaves the Lakers with arguably their deepest roster in years. When you really think about it, the appeal of Mitchell Robinson for the Lakers is obvious. This is someone who has already proven he can deliver in the postseason, showing real value for New York in playoff moments. Adding that kind of rim protector and rebounder instantly checks one of the Lakers' biggest needs. And here's the kicker. Robinson wouldn't come at the cost of the team's most valuable trade chip. Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, or even Maxi Kleber would remain on the roster, giving Los Angeles options to keep building if another opportunity, like an Andrew Wiggins trade, presented itself. From the Knicks' perspective, they've backed themselves into a corner. They either need to sacrifice one of the new contracts they just handed out, or make a trade that usually costs draft capital, assets they don't have in abundance. That's where the Lakers could step in. By offering Vincent, Connect, and a second-rounder, Los Angeles not only gives New York the financial flexibility and roster spot they need, but they also land Robinson without touching their premium assets. It's the kind of move that makes sense for both sides, especially with Brooklyn lurking as a third team, eager to stockpile young players and draft picks. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Robinson's contract is expiring. If things don't work out, the Lakers still maintain long-term flexibility. In the short term, though, his presence completely reshapes their front-court rotation. Jackson Hayes, instead of being the second option, slides into a more comfortable third spot. On nights when Robinson sits due to his injury history, Hayes can step in and soak up minutes. But in the playoffs, Robinson gives Los Angeles something it hasn't truly had in years: a consistent rim protector and shot blocker who can swing a series. Put all that together, and you see why this scenario deserves real exploration. It's low risk, potentially high reward, and it doesn't stop the Lakers from continuing to chase bigger names. Imagine a depth chart where Robinson is anchoring the paint, Wiggins is on the wing, and veterans like Al Horford or DeAnthony Melton are filling gaps. That's not just plugging holes, that's a full-scale roster upgrade. And of course, this is the kind of move that sparks debate. Should the Lakers go all in on Robinson despite the injury risks? Or should they hold out and aim higher later in the season? That's where the discussion begins.